with there it goes. So we're live, and ladies and gentlemen, a little warning: I'm in storming Seattle right now. It's imagine that it's raining in Seattle, but the connection isn't too good, so bear with us. I have my man Ryan. How are you, buddy?
Doing well, doing great.
Awesome, man. And at the beginning here, I'm going to make a quick announcement. If you guys like what I do, to consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put a link to my Patreon in the comments down below. Right. There we go. And thank you to everybody that supports me financially on Patreon. I appreciate every single one of you. It means the world to me. And also consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Bow Wow Bill on YouTube. And I think that's it, man. Oh, I got this thing too. Hold on. I forget to use this. It cracks me up, dude.
I like it.
Thank you, buddy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So Ryan Woodruff, man, how are you?
I'm doing well. It was a pretty intense week, a lot of activity before we slow down for the holidays and Christmas and what's to come next week. But as with most of us in this industry, we all know that it doesn't stop so long as we're responsible for dogs. So this place, I'm at Clear Path as we speak. It's empty. I'm the only one left here because I'm waiting on some volunteers to pick up their puppies and take them home for the weekend.
So I'm going to share this on my personal page. And while I do that, do you want to let everybody know who you are and what you do exactly and where you're located at?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ryan Woodruff. Currently, I work at Clear Path for Veterans. I serve as the National Director of Canine Programs. I've been with Clear Path for 7 years. What Clear Path does is we provide holistic wraparound services to veterans and their families. And clearly with that, there is a canine program. There are other programs, but the one that I'm specifically responsible for, we raise and train purpose-bred dogs to be placed with veterans diagnosed with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, or military sexual trauma, which, really, I've said this before in the last quick segment we did, it goes beyond that. We place service dogs with those that are really looking for increased independence, that have been affected by their time in service. And, I would say, as somebody that has experienced it firsthand, that dogs inherently, service dog or not, make a huge impact on people's lives. And there's science, of course, but I don't look at it as from a data perspective, just that, we're taking something that we already know and channeling all that energy into something purposeful and productive.
Yeah, man. I've been looking forward to chatting with you, and Ryan and I, we met at the Napopo New Silver School in November. And here's the website. I put up a link into the website, you guys, in the comments down below as well. And you are 5013C nonprofit, is that correct?
Yep, we are 501c3. We've
C3.
been doing what we do for over 10 years now. I stepped into the organization in 2016, and that was actually my first immersion into the canine world. I had no experience prior to that other than just standard dog ownership.
No kidding.
I actually started here as what was called a peer mentor, which we still deploy here at Clear Path. And what I was responsible for was helping veterans in their transition from military to civilian culture. And so there's a lot there, but in summary, it could be anything as far to the extreme of homelessness and substance abuse to, hey, I'm out, I'm looking to enhance my resume, go to school, get a job. What is it? The military has a bit of a reputation for not doing enough in helping veterans assimilate into what's coming when they get out. And that goes for the 1 year, the 1 term enlistment to the career services, all the way to a 20-year enlistment. It's a lot. And then people generally aren't prepared for what it's like to get out. And that's where I started, and inherently got involved in the Canine program along the way.
There's so much to consider when going and entertaining the idea of going into the military. Are you from a family of military brats? You
No.
just went? What was your motivation to enter the military, Ryan?
Yeah. So growing up, we moved quite a bit, and I was consistently a new kid everywhere we went. I think we talked a little bit about this, but I moved from school to school, district to district, state to state. I lived all up and down the East Coast, and so it was somewhat isolating, to be honest with you. And grew up like a lot of people that were attracted to the idea of the military, watching a lot of the movies, glorifying combat, and looking at that side of it as in, man, this looks great. There's a brotherhood. You can get involved in something where you build these unbreakable bonds. And there's just the whole idea of the military for me was something that as far back as I can remember, that I always wanted to do. Why the Marines specifically? I'm sure there'll be some those watching this that may disagree, but the Marines have a reputation, right, of being some of it's the most difficult branch to navigate through basic training, get into your MOS, and it's the hard road, and I would stand by that. And I wanted to take the hard road, so for me, it was military always, and then Marines was just something that, like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, and this is the route I want to take, and that's just what I did.
Yeah, what do they call the Marines? Leathernecks, first to fight, devil dogs. There's all like that come to mind is not even a Marine, right? That it's just kind of baked in that these guys are the toughest, right? That's what I think of when I hear Marine. Semper Fi. My buddy John Sparks was a Marine, and there's just this camaraderie, this, like you said, a brothership that happens. And we talk about that too with when we do that NAPO post school about like
Yeah.
bonding through struggle, right, is so much more stronger, and the bonds go deeper because you guys have achieved something together that's not easy. And I can only imagine in the Marines. I was going to go into the Army, but I ended up that I just something happened. My life was kind of took a turn, and here I am, 47 now, and it's a little too late, but I appreciate it. I appreciate the need for it. A big history buff, man, and watching through the progression and the evolution of the armed forces, not just in America but all around the world. And I was thinking about you, man. I've been watching some of these movies and documentaries, not necessarily the movies, but documentaries are where what I like. And the Netflix has this new one where they colorized all the World War II stuff. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yep.
Wild stuff, man. And
It is
you get
wild.
in World War One too. Like they have some of the stuff that I think National Geographic did with World War One, and that we get a lot of the innovations and that we see today in the modern military that stems all the way back to there, man. And it's crazy. And then you see the effect that people didn't realize what would happen to the psyche and to the mental health of people. In World War One, they developed a thing called the Tavistock Institute, where they actually studied shell shock, right? And so that's where it started. But it's also like there's all these unforeseen functions of dealing with the theater of war, and how to process that when you come back home. Can you speak on that a little bit? I know it's
Yeah,
a lot.
sure. There's so much packed in that, and I will say, from what I do now, what I most appreciate is working with the eras before mine. So we're fortunate enough to have a large population of Vietnam veterans that are still receiving services from ClearPath, and some of which are receiving service dogs from our program. And to me, that's the the era of service members that came back that didn't receive the same welcoming that some of us did. And as a result, they went through some very difficult times, but paved the way for this generation of veterans transitioning out of the military. A lot of good was done through a lot of horrible stuff, and um, shell shock and all of the things that we now know to be clinically post-traumatic stress and a lot of other things. It's it's not just one thing, and that's when we get into this conversation and service dogs for military related PTSD. What I've learned in the time I'm doing this, it's so much more. There's so many comorbidities that go along with post traumatic stress. There's a spectrum of crisis out there that you talk about: isolation, panic attacks, anxiety, nightmares, depression, borderline personality disorder. There's so much out there to zero in and say we're specifically serving to mitigate symptoms related to this is just, I would say that's too general of a statement, and there's so much more that goes on. I think a lot of veterans that transition out of the military really starting with identity, struggling with who they are. Who are they in this new world that they're going to be joining? What is it like to attend a college class, with students that are a lot younger than you? And how does what you have been taught and brought up on translate into that environment? So,
Mm.
what really interests me in relation to what we do with dogs is there's a lot of similarities. And when you compare, entering a service member into an unknown new environment, and you're basically disarming them and asking them to, hey, this is what it is now. We've basically given you a 3-day what they call SEPs and TAPs to learn what it is to be a civilian, and then you're done. You
Sep,
get your DD 214.
Seps and taps. How do you spell it? Seps.
Yeah, it's an acronym. I don't know exactly what it stands for off the top of
Okay.
my head, but when you're leaving the military, every branch will have a different version of transition training, and it's usually between 2 and 3 days. I'm sure some people might comment on that, but it's it's not sufficient. It's there needs to be a more proactive approach to the intercession of, these are kids, really. I got out when I was 22 years old. At the time, I had already done 2 deployments to Iraq in 2006 and 2007. And going from 4 years of just fast moving experience like that, and then you're essentially, you grew up in one sense, right? But you're not. You're being asked to move into this culture and assimilate, move forward. And some are successful with that. Others carry stuff for a long time, and it just doesn't work out. And as it would in a manual or a storybook. So again, there's just a lot to unpack there.
Well, and it's this transition assistant program. That's the TAPS, and then the outbound has something to do with the SEPs. I'm looking at the acronyms right now because I get hung up on that stuff. Well, it's very interesting to me as somebody who is a civilian who hasn't gone through this type of stuff, and that's the other reason why you guys have such a firm brotherhood and why it's veterans helping veterans, because you guys understand a knowledge base through your experience. And whether it's whether you saw combat or not, right? There's still deployment. There's just a lifestyle that you kind of get used to, that in some ways is harder, in some ways is easier, because you are. How is it? How is being in the military harder, and how is it easier? Would you say, Ryan?
Yeah. Well, one thing is you're on a contract. So to me, you take the choice away. I mean, there's always choice. People can break a contract, and they've done that. But when you're on a contract for a 4-year enlistment and whatever it is you're doing, I was in the infantry, and you enter into that lifestyle. And to me, I I don't have a problem following rules and doing what I'm told and moving fast. And that's just when you're on that program. uh, if you look at it in that sense, it's easy. It's, regardless of what your decisions are after duty or when you're done for the day, you're still going to be up at 0 dark 30. You're still going to be in formation at this time. You're still going to do the PT. You're going to go to the field. You're going to wait around for hours before you're told you're going to be doing anything. There is a ton of for lack of better words, mind fucking that goes on in the military that just teaches you I would say a certain level of resiliency that you just adapt to, and you just expect in every situation or scenario that you're going to be in is most likely not going to be really pleasant. And to be candid, I think this is from my background. I love NAPOPO, and I love the way in which the whole framework of the system works, and just how that's applied both to dogs, but to us too. Mm-hmm. And there's never been anything that I have found great pleasure in that didn't start with struggle, ever. I mean, nothing. Everything has required some form of deep work or pressure. I mean, everything. If you're going to be it fitness, be it sports, everybody's into jujitsu now, right? I mean, there's
learning an art, learning how to work with dogs, or learning. Like, there's a struggle to learning, and that's what makes it valuable. It's like, if it was just handed to you, it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, when you don't struggle to earn it, then it isn't as meaningful to you.
Yeah.
And so I found this thing on YouTube too for day in a life of, I don't know, I haven't watched this. It's going to be not any audio or anything, but this says a day in the life of the Marines here, which I don't know, like, just a little.
This is exactly what it was like. I remember these situations very vividly.
Yeah, well, it's something that you would wake up early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning, right? Every morning.
It depends, it depends, right? In the theater of war, you don't have a schedule. I mean, if you're, and specifically to the deployments I served on, it didn't matter whether it was, if you got sleep when you got sleep. It was what's called continuous, and you got it when you got it. If you could get a half hour here or 45 minutes there, great. Otherwise, if you're called to duty and whatever that might be, then you're going, you're doing it. I mean, it's just, there wasn't a system in which you could say, this is going to be a predictable structure in all ways. If insurgents want to attack your OP at some point, or set off an IED when you're supposed to be sleeping, you're still getting up and you're responding to it. Like, there's no choice involved in that. Yeah. And during the times in which, the years in which we deployed, it just happened to be that was a pretty contentious time for our nation. We were going through a lot, and we were at the height of the war of Iraqi freedom, and that's just how it was expected. Now, in peacetime, like, the Marine Corps, in my experience at the time I served, I got dropped to my unit, and within 7 months we deployed. And that 7 months was just pre-deployment workup, training, and train hard. And you train in such a way that when reality happens and you're in it, that you can rely on some of that reflex response and that muscle memory that you built in through the 7-month workup, and come back, you go through another 7-month workup, and you go again. And that was just how things went when I was in. And, that in part was why I was ready to be done at the end of my 4 years, because I was fortunately, I was lucky to have made it through that and get back, and civilian world looked pretty good to me at the time.
Well, and there's things that you just don't consider, I would assume. Like, and you went to Iraq, is that correct? Or where did you go?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
During the
Iraq, both deployments.
Operation Freedom and
Iraqi
what
freedom. Yeah.
the Iraqi Freedom. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy, man. I remember as somebody, I would have nightmares on things that I would see on the news and stuff, and I had no experience there at all, and I would have nightmares. And so I can't even imagine what it was like for you, dude.
You know, there were certainly other units that deployed that I would say faced much more difficult engagements. I mean, we definitely were in it. We were in combat. We lost a lot of Marines, and there was loss. I mean, that it was a combat deployment, no less. And I don't like to compare one to the next, but I do feel very lucky in that experience uh, to have gone through it and lived it and made it out of it. And you know, I at the time I was so young, it wasn't really a reality to me. I think at 19 years old, and that's how old I was on my first deployment. Like you're programmed in such a way that you kind of think you're nothing bad's gonna happen and you're invincible. And I'll tell you right now, at 36, if I were to deploy in the same situation, wouldn't be I would be a lot more careful than I was back then. And I would say that's probably why the system is the way it is, because life lessons have taught me a lot in terms of just what to do in these scenarios. And, it's just crazy to think about, 19 through 22 and what we're asking some of the men and women that serve our country to do at such a young age it's just the gravity of it is very there's a lot there.
Well, and like you said, it's designed that way because of I remember being 20 myself, 19 myself, dude. I was
Yeah.
I'm so glad I didn't have Facebook. That's all I gotta say. Like, and I see the younger dog trainers, right? And that are go-getters, man. And that's all they and I get it. Absolutely. And I actually talked to Michael Bellin about this, about remembering back when we were that age and that we could rule the world. No problem, man. Like it's easy, right? It's something. But then as we grow older, we change.
Yeah.
And the things that we
A lot more
care
to
about.
lose.
Yeah, we got a lot more to lose, but we reflect and through the experience and through the knowledge that we've gained, I don't know, man, it's something different. Like you start to not care. Like I remember as a younger kid too, I would care what other people thought about me. And maybe that has something to do with it, right? Is the peer pressure aspect of being so young and but now I could give a shit, like I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like I really could. I could say stuff. I mean, I was always one that would say what was on my mind, and it got me into trouble a lot of times. But I'm still that guy. It's just that now I have a larger scope of experience to base my questions in life off of, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I found. I mean, and that's why I'm so in love with God. And you and I spoke about that. That was pretty cool to find out that you're a believer. And but it took me to a point in my life where I sought God purposefully, and sometimes
Yeah.
I could see that happening in the military as well. And just
Yeah.
say,
100%. I mean, just in terms of faith, my faith has always been there. I've always believed in God, but in as a in country in Iraq, I remember before I deployed, I was given a pendant, Saint Michael, and a cross, and I wore it on every patrol. I mean, I never took the thing off, right? Like to me, that was what brought me into the wire every time I got done with an op or a patrol. And when I was on post, I would hang it up on a nail, and it was just there, and I'd pay attention to it. And I remember I had a flak jacket with a sappy plate, bulletproof armor, and the thing used to like dig into my chest. But to me, I actually liked it because I was like, I know that's on, I know it's there. And, I would say still to this day, my faith was pretty shallow when I was in the military. And it wasn't until I got out and experienced some real low points that I rediscovered what it is to be, what my true identity is in the world that we occupy, and how I'm going to behave going forward, how I'm going to treat people, the things I do. It all has a center point, and you know what that is.
And you decided to serve others in your peer mentorship. How did you find Clear Path for Veterans?
Yeah. So when I got out of the military, I thought I was going to be a cop because that seemed like a pretty natural course, and didn't work out in my favor. I went to school and got a degree in criminal justice, and it just wasn't in the cards for me. They weren't hiring at the time, and when it did come up, I had other opportunities. So I transitioned into forestry and natural resources. I went to school for that. Dabbled in some wildlife, and I ended up finishing a bachelor's in natural resources management and in forestry. And I worked for a tree company I was an arborist. So I was a arborist for a large tree company for 6 years. And I was, I mean, I was young, but I was still breaking my body after doing the 4 years in the infantry. And then, at this point, I'm, taking down trees and carrying wood in and out of backyards and all day, 10 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, depending on the schedule. I was looking for something different. Loved what I did, and I did really well with that. But a buddy of mine who also served during the time I served was working at Clear Path, and he was involved in helping veterans find different careers in an employment program. And he called me up and was like, "Hey man, there's this opportunity. It's right in your region that involves connecting with other veterans and getting them back on their feet. What do you think?" And I was like, "Yeah, definitely." Like it was a pay cut at the time, but I was ready for a big change. So I applied, got the job, and May of 2016, I started with ClearPath.
Cool, man. And you started as a peer mentor. And so
Yep.
that and then
And
so
it,
how did the dog thing happen, and what did that look like when you started?
Yeah. So in 2016, as a peer mentor, again, our programs work side by side. So, we're doing a lot of different. Consider ClearPath kind of like a YMCA for veteran services. There's several different programs that are supposed to take into account the dimensions of wellness, so that no matter where you are, we can meet you and figure out what the best way forward is. The dog program at the time, I was like immediately attracted to, mainly as an observer, right? But there were no veterans that were actually working within the dog program at the time. Had a different name, and the model was very different than what we are today. It was actually based on shelter dogs. So they
Hmm.
were transitioning dogs from a shelter and training them for a period of time, providing them to a veteran that would then engage in a longer term training program with that dog. So considering my experience, I was like, you know what, I'm going to sign up for this. I'm going to buy into this. And I think it might be good for me. I've always had an affinity for dogs, and I really wanted to see what I could do with the veteran community that was going through the program. So taking what I did as a peer mentor and then applying that to, as a recipient, working with other veterans going through the program. So I did it, and I was matched with a dog at the time. She was a shelter dog that came from Texas. Had the background of what you would traditionally see with these shelter dogs coming from Texas, as a stray. Limited information, right? All I could tell you was at the time this dog was highly social, loved
Okay.
people, assimilated pretty well into this new way of life. But I think when you come from a pretty unfortunate background, and then you're provided with like a wealth of resources, um, people, and different things and opportunities, this dog was like, yeah, this is rocking. I love this. And When I was matched with that dog, I would say now I wasn't ready. Wasn't ready, right? I was still going through some of my own stuff. And I think a lot of that was in some way vicariously transferred to my dog. So I entered into this training program, and I don't know, it was probably within 6 months, this dog had developed a aversion to people, pretty substantial. Um, which if I had a description of my character at the time, I would say I was a much different person than I am now. And so, you know, this she became outwardly, I'll say the term, aggressive when people came into my space. And it started with, the hard eye contact to growling to barking to lunging. And for me at the time, I struggled with that. I was really on one end, I was like, okay, you know what? We hit a road stop here and a barrier to whatever my goal is. I'm going to take this thing and see what I can do with it. And with that, they invested in me to go into a training school. So I actually, in my training journey, I started as a force-free trainer. And at the time I went through a course that taught me all of the theory and the book work, and the practical side was done mostly in-house in apprenticeship with other trainers. But in my mind at the time, it was like, this is the way. This is, if it can be done, why wouldn't I be attracted to that? Right? Like,
Yeah,
if I can train this dog, which who knows what the background was,
What kind of dog was she?
So she was a German Shepherd cross with something. I don't know. She's black, had pointy ears. And she had a lot of drive. She was really high in prey. She wanted to chase the cars every time they drove by. So, and I want to start by, as a disclosure, all of this changed over time. The whole model of this program has changed because of how I went through and experienced this, right? And this is all very important. I went through about 8 months of training, twice a week working with this dog, and under a very singular minded system. This is the way we're going to train. We're going to do it this way. And it's all based on differential reinforcement, distance, and working thresholds. And I, in my mind, I was like, okay, this is how it's done. This is how it's done. I'm going to carve out the time and make it happen. And, what they don't prepare you for in that is that all the mistakes that can happen in between these 6 to 12 month rigid counter conditioning and desensitization periods. Like, it's just not, even as somebody that was investing in doing this as a full-time gig, it was impossible to avoid every trigger. And every time she had an explosive reaction, it took our training like way backwards. So at one point I said, I'm done doing this. Like, I'll keep her, like, she'll be my pet dog.
Do you remember what that point was? Do you remember what it was, the scenario? And I get it. Like, you come into this, like, and I was the same way, Ryan. Like, I was like, dude, I'm going to train dogs. I love them. And of course I'm going to be like, it's like the Kung Fu master. Like, yeah, if I can not use any force, if I can make this like where everything feels good all the time, then why wouldn't I? Right. So, but do you remember the
culmination of things? One of which is I started to be a careful observer, watching people go through this program and some of the things they're facing, and then realizing that not only did this not work out in the way I had hoped and intended for it to, but it actually, in my opinion, started to make things worse. So sitting in an office with a dog with these characteristics under my desk, and every time somebody would come in through the door or walk up to the gate that I had at the door, have these explosive reactions, I became hypersensitized to things coming up behind me, walking down. I was already triggering before the dog did. And so if you take somebody that is experiencing medium to high level symptoms of PTSD and and then you throw that into the mix. Like, what do you do with that, right? I mean, so the whole system got flipped upside down for me. Um, my entire way of thinking started to change, and I started to introduce some different ideas into the program. Like, for one, I believe we don't have the right dog. I went to a conference, and it was for a large coalition of providers that establish high standards of excellence. I won't think it's the best idea to get into naming that right now, but I'm sure people can guess. And I had spoke to a lot of industry providers, and I saw what I thought was the ideal picture of a service dog. I'm seeing these dogs walk around, and these owners that are just, they don't really have to be on top of the dog all the time, having these conversations. The dogs were just doing the job. And I had spoken to one of the CEOs of a large organization and talked to him about what I did and had a vulnerable conversation. And I always approach things with honesty, and just, I'm not holding my cards close to my chest. Like, I'm just going to tell him what I do and how I do it, and get good feedback. And he's like, you got the wrong dog. This is the keystone variable. Everything else looks okay, but this is the part that's wrong. So came back to ClearPath, and after this conference, and put a proposal together to make some big changes so that we could lead towards, at least on the acquisition side, finding a better dog. Now, further down the road, that, as this story continues, so to say, we started a puppy development program to raise puppies. So that's a different model than what we were doing, where we were just taking dogs under the age of 18 months and entering them into this program, and take puppies and, start from 8 weeks, shape them, get them through their critical periods of development, start paying attention to these fear periods, and do the training along this whole trajectory. And then you might have a better dog. So that was the new model going forward. I will say to this day that it still wasn't the right dog. And that's another part of the story. But in between this process, I was leaving my dog at home, and because taking her to work was just a disaster, for lack of better words, and it became more of a hindrance on me doing my job and all the things we already talked about. Anyways, she was let out, and I wasn't home, and I had just had my kids at the time. So I had newborn babies at home. And so while they were being attended to, my dog was let out, recalled, didn't come back, ran down to the road, a busy stretch of country road, got hit by a car. So, all that to say, even though she didn't become my service dog, this was still like a kindred spirit to me. Like, this dog was still like
Bonded,
a dog
yeah.
I invested into personally with a purpose. So there was still a lot wrapped up in that. So I'm on my way home, and I get this phone call from a kid that hit her, and it's like, hey man, I don't know how to tell you this, but I hit your dog, and I'm sorry, and I'm gonna stay here. She's still alive. And for me, anytime like a scenario like this happens, I go into an autopilot. That's just how my brain has been wired. When something terrible happens, my hardware says you got to go respond as quick as possible, get there, triage the situation, and then decide what to do. Well, it turns out I get there, she's still alive, but she was getting ready to pass, but she was in great pain. She's bleeding out of both ends. Eyes were glazed over. She had a broken back. Everything was bad. And a friend of mine that was a neighbor had a beef farm close by, and I looked at him, and he knows a lot about life and death and animals, and he's like, it's not good. So in that moment, I was forced to make a decision, and I had to take my own dog's life, because that was the most ethical thing to do in the moment. There was nothing that could be done that didn't lead to increased suffering. So again, like the culmination, like my story, this is what brought me into the arena of I cannot accept that positive reinforcement training is the only way to train a dog based on this experience that I just had. And that for me was the kicker. That was it. That was when I started to do some research, open up my mind. I started listening to different podcasts and was quickly introduced to the NEPO system through, actually, I was listening to Canine Conversations with Jay Jack and
Chad Mackin.
that led me into listening to the Canine Paradigm. And of course, like this was 2018, 19.
Okay.
I started hearing Pat Stewart talk about NEPO, and I was like, this all just makes sense. Like, why was I so blind to see that this is how dogs learn, and it's how I learned, and it's how I've been able to get through a lot of the difficult points of my life. And in retrospect, and not like, I felt so much guilt in not applying that to my own dog and having her go through that whole process. So I quickly just started to dive into every piece of material that I could to educate myself. You know, I started to do the Learberg thing and go through all the videos.
Okay.
And as soon as an opportunity came up to sign up for NEPO Silver, which for me was March of 2020, which was a really horrible time to travel across the country. But that's when I did my NEPO Silver. It was literally the week everything shut down. There were people going home, and it was a crazy time. But I was like, that experience for me was just, it changed my entire world in the way I thought. And looking back, it's never been the same. And it's all the dogs are better for that.
Amen. Well, and what I mean, and I'm just missed you, dude, because I did the gold right after that in 2020.
Yeah.
You know, and they canceled all my flights, everything, and I ended up renting a big old Tahoe and shooting down, right, driving 35 hours from Seattle. And I'm messaging, of course. I'm messaging Pat Stewart right now while we're talking. Anytime we shout somebody out, I'm like letting them know, hey, love you, Pat, bro. Yeah, you're a good dude. And I put up a link, you guys. You mentioned the Canine Paradigm, so I put up a link to their website. You mentioned Learberg.com, Ed Frawley's website. I put that up in the comments down below as well. But yeah, dude, I remember, and we have a lot in similar, man. Like I've had to dispatch an animal. I've had to dispatch a dog. I've had to, I mean, it's something that'll stay with you forever, but it's also, I mean, we experience things in life because I do believe in a creator. I do believe that there is a higher lesson for these experiences, even though they're fucking gut wrenching or just like heart, just rips your heart out. But you can tell, like after that moment, it's like, dude, I'm changed. Like this will never happen again. Not just to me, but hopefully to somebody else that comes across my path because of my experience that I've had. And
it certainly wasn't an immediate either. You know, there's a lot more going on. Again, for anybody that's recently transitioning out of the military, I would say be patient with the process, because I've been out since 2009 and I'm still going through it. It doesn't end. It's a continuous struggle. And, you know, just the thing is you keep fighting and you work through it. And during this pivotal moment of my life, like it was like a couple months earlier that I had quit drinking. I had a drinking problem and I'd quit drinking. So I was going cold turkey sober. And I was starting to like make some changes. Those changes were being made because my life was falling apart, candidly. And this happened. And I remember in the immediate aftermath, I had somebody offer me a beer and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like that's
the last thing I need right now.
Right. But I did isolate for days, you know, like I had to like work through this and try to come out of the other end. You know, I won't say better, but at some point that's what it led to. And there's, you know, a series of horrible shit that happened in my life between the moment that I quit drinking and losing my father unexpectedly shortly after I lost my dog. Like a lot of stuff happened, right? And it just, this goes into a different discussion that you and I could have, but that's what brought me into my faith more. And really, I had nowhere else to turn, nothing left to do. There were basically two choices in that moment. And, one of them wasn't going to be good. And the other was like, okay, I surrender. What else do I have left? And that changed my way of life. And that changed my approach to dog training. It changed the way I interact with the general public, with people. And I would say that's kind of when I really hit the lowest point and started just navigating through the upward trajectory and climbing your way out of something like that. And again, if you can make it through something that bad and get out on the other end, like the same with the Nipopo system, right? The reward so much better. And that's what I'm experiencing these days. I feel blessed and just living a life of abundance. I love dog training. I love the community. These days, beyond just doing service dogs, I recently purchased a Dutch Shepherd from a friend that I went to the Nipopo Silver with, and I'm raising him to get into sport. And I'm just really having an awesome time with it. It's an amazing community. The Nipopo community, I would say, to me, is what I love about it. Is it a lot of the same reasons I love the brotherhood in the military. It's a shared community, like-minded group of individuals, and it's a creative minority of people that are looking to be the best versions of themselves. But also, I would say it's a very collaborative community. There wasn't a single person that I met at the last Silver that we attended that just didn't have a good posture about them, that was looking to learn and improve their skill sets and vulnerability. That's what I'm all about.
Dude. And that's why I like you, dude. And I'm liking you even more, but and just a little side note, like we don't have too many we have way more viewers than this typically. And Pat is letting me know he's trying to find us, and there's something going on where it's like, it doesn't say unavailable. So if you guys are watching this after the fact, I'll probably post after the fact, but that's what's going on. I can see it. Send me a link. Okay. Pat Stewart's helping me out. Thank you, Pat, dude. You're the man. But I'm sure that this will work out as long as it's on like we're recording it now. So it's, even if I have to post it later. And Ryan, you don't even know how many people I've done 180 of these talks, and how many people have been down the rabbit hole of purely positive or force-free, and they go to get help, get actual help, and they find out that they like it just doesn't work, man. Like they have a serious dog, they have something that is I don't know, but they love their dog and they don't want to give up. And a lot of times, okay, yeah, I see it there. Okay, good. So we're streaming live on YouTube, definitely. Pat, if you can comment to let us know if you're here, Pat Stewart, love you, buddy. And they go out and they reach a point, because a lot of times too, these force-free trainers have told them to euthanize their dog. And there's so many dogs, dude, it'll make me start crying, bro, if I start to even think about all these dogs that aren't here that don't need to be in heaven, man. They don't need they just need a good correction, or they need a good solid boundary that's in place. And a lot of people have gone out, they found the real information and they've applied it, they fixed the problem that they had with their dog. They go back to the purely positive, whether it be their veterinarian, whether it be another trainer, and they're like, hey man, I want to help you guys because what I did actually fixed the problem. And then they were demonized, they were attacked, and the industry is broken, in my opinion, bro. I mean, we belong to a broken world anyway in so many different ways. But that's one of the reasons why I do these live streams, Ryan, is so people that are new in the industry, new or thinking about becoming dog trainers, that they can find real help. And a lot of times too, when the people that have noticed the gap of understanding, they've stepped up to fill that gap themselves, kind of like what you're doing by doing what's needed to actually help these dogs, man. Right?
Yeah, and it's a very convincing narrative that you enter into when you're considering getting into dog training. If you start the Google searching and getting on the internet and just trying to see what the best approaches are, it puts you in that, it just vacuums you into that ideology, and that's why a lot of us start there. And who's not attracted to that? I mean, I've heard a lot of other trainers say that. And I think there will be a period. I have hope that a lot of these people that are getting involved into a career in the industry, and they start there, eventually I think at some point their eyes will be opened if they continue to invest their time into quality dog training and ethical dog training. I mean, this is ethical. I mean, you can save a dog's life by deploying more than just one quadrant of the system. And it's just not, again, I mean, I don't even know if we want to get wrapped up into it, because it'll just be a never ending conversation. And it's a struggle in my world, I'll tell you, honestly. And in the service dog world, as everybody here knows that's watching, I mean, a service dog has to be bulletproof to the general public. They can't be distracted while they're working. They can't interact with items in the store. They have to be able to assimilate into any environment that you put them into. And the governance behind the industry right now is killing me. I mean, they are pushing programs like ours into basically not having an option. You have to do it this way, or you're not going to be, we're not going to consider you a legitimate organization, taking into account the highest standards of care and training and excellence. And it's very biased. And I mean, we're seeing this in a lot of different spaces, but I will say in this particular space, it's coming, and it's coming fast. And programs like mine and others are going to they're going to struggle. I mean, I don't like to assume anything, but here's the way it works. We acquire these purpose-bred dogs that are genetically selected to do the job. And no matter how many dogs are bred in those cohorts, they're distributed out to these programs. I'm one of them, and several others. And if they don't meet the behavioral criteria and it can't be resolved using positive reinforcement, then they go under a career change, right? So, and then what? What alternative career does that dog do? Is it just being a pet dog in somebody's home? So, if you look at the compound effects of this, by denying trainers to be the professionals that they are and deploy these skills in the artful manner that they do, and saying you can only do it this way, there's going to be an increased abundance of dogs that are getting career changed in this industry and put out into the community as pet dogs that didn't receive the training that they needed to be successful. And that's a problem as well.
We already see it happening in the UK, man. Like what happens is at the waiting list of people requiring these dogs, it becomes unobtainable. Like it becomes an unreachable goal for people that want a service dog, because like if you can't correct a dog that is balking at a train station as a train approaches, if you can't,
Right.
like, because that could save that person's life. If we have a dog, I mean, automatically I can see how dogs will get dropped from a program, like really prey-driven dogs that like a bird flies by and they go running after this bird or something naturally, and that's a natural inclination. Absolutely drop them for the program, right? But if there's dogs that have trouble with dealing with stimulus that's present in a human world that we can correct and make sure that they experience it in a way that they can endure, then why not? It's just like,
Yeah.
but if we don't even have the option of correcting or guiding that animal, then
Yeah.
our hands are tied, and the selection of animals are going to be very, very slim.
Right. And we can influence learned behavior. It's the stuff that, I do believe that you want to find the right dog for the job. I think that's just what we should be doing in any respect. If you have a career in mind for a dog, then make sure you got the right dog to do the career. That's not breed bias or anything. That's it's just what makes sense. If you're looking at it, and it's not the rule. There are exceptions. I've seen some amazing service dogs out there that weren't bred specifically to be service dogs, that have worked into that role in that career and have done it really well and do it without any diminished motivation. But for the most part, I mean, to increase the likelihood of success within our respected space, you want to find a dog that is bred to do the job. There's so much we can do as trainers. There's some things that we can't deprogram out of the dog, and that's just something that I've learned over time as well.
Yeah. Well, there's just so many things that it's just is not true that people
Yeah,
adhere to, and that's where I really appreciate the truth, man. I and sometimes it can be brutal, but that's what I remember having a prayer one day. I was like, Lord, I don't care how bad it is. I want the truth. I can handle it. Right. And that's, you got to be careful about some things you ask for because you get,
yeah,
it's rough, but why placate ourselves by seeing by accepting something that's not truth just because it feels good? And
yeah.
that's what what do you think that people are so prone to only view the force free? I mean, we're both guilty of it, so we can speak from our experiences, but as a whole, why do you think this is in effect in today's world?
It's a very attractive model. I mean, if that's what's being preached out there, that it can be done in such a way, I'm not surprised. Like, why anybody that has a lack of knowledge in this space that can see on the whiteboard, there's this option and this option. They both work and they both work to the same, like, if that's what's being said, then why aren't, of course people are going to go that route. Most people are going to start in this space these days in 2023, unless they have uh, gone through a family owned business in which somebody can be hands on with them, learning and teaching them and helping them avoid the pitfalls of the entry points of the dog training world. You got to start with, where's the entry points? What is the entry point? Somebody that's just looking to get into it. Usually it's, I have a dog, I like my dog, and maybe training is something. They got bankers that want to become trainers nowadays and things of that. I mean, look at me. I had nothing to do with dogs when I was in the military. I had military working dogs attached to our platoon, and they would go out on patrols with us, but I wasn't working dogs. But I got, this is where I ended up. This is where I am, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But yeah, I fell into the trap. And it's all with good intentions. There's great intentions out there, and it's hard to fight that fight.
Well, and keep in mind too, Ryan, like this is, I know that you and I are going to have a few different conversations, man. So like we can expand on all this stuff as long as we want, because we'll have another talk, as long as you're willing to. Um, it's like, it's almost like, well, first off, you said best intentions. Guess what? The road to hell is paved with good
Yeah,
intentions, right? And
yeah,
so even
yeah,
though your mind is good, and like it's like a woke, like the woke mind virus that we talk about, in especially here in the United States, on like this is something that is is kind of taking over, like like these buzzwords of like equality and um and diversity and all this stuff, and I'm all for it, but there's also aspects of talking about things that are true
Yeah.
that don't sound nice, right? And so
Right.
that's the other is like I think that there's an element of like woke, and I use that term, or just like people that I don't know how to put this. I'm trying to think because like I told you I use that chat GTP, right, which is AI, and I'll
Hmm.
ask them, and even right here, like with when I go to search what is force free training, like this is what I get. Like it's a method of training dogs or any animal per se without using force, coercion, threats, or intimidation, or inflicting pain on the animal, avoid punishment or anything that evokes fear, panic, cause pain or harm. And then in the next question, it says why force free training doesn't work. Okay. And I was like, oh, that's cool that that's right up there. But guess what the answer they give? And this is where it illustrates. It's like, so why force free training doesn't work? Because it's not used properly. And to me, it's like, no, it doesn't work because it doesn't work. So,
Yeah.
and it's like just like the upside down vacuum, you cannot fault the method when it is being used incorrectly. You cannot put a reactive dog in a situation above their threshold and think
Yeah.
treats will keep them calm. And so I think that there's just some type of misunderstanding or acceptance or way to spin this where people don't realize until they're in a situation where I mean the environment forces the dog to be in a situation above their reactive threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so that's the other aspect of this is like we can train our
Most
dogs.
often, I
Go ahead.
mean, even in the use of the NEPO system or the training in which methodology, whatever you want to call it, I mean, you would never, most often than not, when I'm working a dog, you, the system teaches you how to train a dog, to perform the cue with heart and soul at all times with no diminished motivation. So when you're looking at me training my dog, he never ever looks unhappy. There's never a point where this dog is showing any indication that he's not loving the process. Like, so it's just, it's, I don't know. I mean, we could really dig into this topic. I struggle with this stuff, and I get into these debates and I end up just working myself up, and it is what it is at this point. I'm gonna hold true to my values. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna speak my mind and do it in such a way where to try to get everybody to really understand. That's a difficult part too. I mean, working with owners, it's a different thing though. You work through sessions and you start to really show them the process and teach them as you're doing it. And they're all, I've never worked with anybody that's just like doesn't agree with the methodology and how we're training the dog. And I think that's the experience of that is important, right? Working with people, being good with people, and also being able to demonstrate. You have to be able to demonstrate.
Amen. Well, and it's just like this is what Nelson Hodges, one of my mentors, told me that is always stuck. It's like, look, the dog has to be able to trust you first and foremost and trust the situations you put them in, and it eventually trusts themselves in a human world. And I think that that's just a microcosm of what my clients need too. It was like, look, dude, you need to be able to trust me and trust the situations I put you in. And as a teacher, I need to become progressively unnecessary. So you're going to be able to trust yourselves together in this world where chaos is inevitable. Like
Yeah.
you're going to encounter chaos, man. Like chaos and order is a natural rhythm of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's why I say we can't control the world, but
Yeah.
we sure as hell can train our dog. And so like I've been in a school field working a dog that was super reactive with kids, and guess what, immediately there was 150 kids there that these buses showed up because there's a baseball tournament, right? And I'm just like, it's something that like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And if we are in the mindset of like, look, you've messed up, and that's the other aspect of this that I can't stand is the shaming of the people that are sometimes like, just like what you're saying, Ryan, like we don't know the experience, we don't know the silent wars that people are fighting. And I remember saying that to you when we had our little talk at in Missouri. And just so you guys know, I put up the comment, or the in the comment section, I made our talk free of charge on my Patreon page. So it's the link to our talk that we first did about 10 minutes is in the comments, and I encourage everybody to go check that out as well. Because we're kind of getting off onto like the philosophy aspect of this, but I think that it's crucial too, because this is something that is a big topic that needs to be kind of explained, and people don't consider the experiences that others have been through, or don't consider like, look, dude, you got 6 kids. That's the other. I'm not shaming
Yeah.
people for this stuff, and I'm not judging them for anything either,
Right.
right? And that's where I think, especially in this force-free world, like you must not have time, you must be doing it incorrectly, it's your fault, your fault. It's like, no, you have the wrong dog, right? That's what did that feel, dude, when you heard that? When I'm gonna go back to that guy that said that to you, the professional, and you're looking
Yeah.
around, and first off, you're like seeing, oh my goodness, this is possible. Is it
Yeah.
me? Right? I can only imagine that you're like, is it? It must be me. Like I'm,
Yeah.
and then you start realizing, like I'm a fuck up. I'm the one, and it's like, no, dude, you're not. You're awesome. You're wonderful. Let's not deprecate ourselves. And I have a rule, dude. Like no negative self-talk, and I'll get on people for it, and I'll take them aside, and I'll be like, look, man, and this is what I say to them, Ryan, and maybe if you're guilty, or anybody else that's listening is guilty of this, is like, if we allowed another person to talk to us the way that we talk to ourselves sometimes, do you think we would want to associate with that person? Like a friend or
No.
somebody? No way. And so why the hell, if we're not gonna accept that from other people, why the hell would we accept that from ourselves?
Yeah, that's great advice.
Right? And so love yourself, man. We're made in the image of God. He doesn't want you to deprecate yourself. He wants you to love yourself. And that's the other aspect of like serving others or being humble. It's like, no, it doesn't mean to deprecate yourself. It means to,
Yeah.
forego that extra slice of cheesecake or something.
Yeah. Right.
Right? But that's, so what were your thoughts when you finally went to this conference, and then you saw that it was possible, and then you heard
I
that?
felt like the biggest imposter there, to be honest with you. That was my immediate reaction. I felt isolated and out of place and less less than, and it was I felt like I was surrounded by the elites in the industry, and I was that guy that's still doing the shelter dogs. And you know, in that environment, I kind of was, and I've learned otherwise, and I've grown beyond that. But everything you're saying is still, I would say, to a degree, holds true today. And anybody that getting into this, if you don't adopt the lifelong learner posture, then at some point you'll stop, and something new or advanced will come out, and you may miss out on an opportunity. But I don't particularly like to always anchor on new and advanced, because I think that some of the problems we face in this world, the dog training world and the world as a whole, is we forego tradition in every space. And there are some things that historically were bad, but there is a lot that was good as well. Was the framework for learning and behavioral theory, and how do people and animals learn, and ethology, and observing animals in their own environment. What does that look like, and how does that pertain to the Jack Russell that it's chasing whatever in the house, chasing the kids that are running across the kitchen. Like, I think that we just have to be mindful and understand, like, there's a point at which this all comes from, and then do it. I mean, do your due diligence. Why is that the case? Why does that dog do that? And what was done in nature to correct that, if at all? And it's not always like, it's not always the going back to the pack mentality and the wolves and the, it's not always the case when we're looking at domesticated animals. I get that. I'm just, there's a home base for everything, and it's just good to recognize that.
Well, and we have to be honest. We have to be mindful. We have to be honest. And sometimes, like I actually just had a case where it's like, no, you got the wrong dog, dude. Right? And they love this damn dog, but it's never ever going to be a situation that they want it to be. And I'm like telling them, look, this is a working dog. You got a working dog, and it's got an unemployment situation, and it's never going to be the house dog that you want. And
Yeah.
and so I found them a good home. I found the dog a good home, so now we know we didn't have to euthanize the dog or anything like that. That
Mhm.
wasn't even on the table, dude. Like
Yeah.
there's so many resources in the dog world of people that are very niched out, whether it be in the service world like you are, the hunting world, the protection world, the police, like that these dogs would make a really good fit in, right? And
Yeah. And my thing with
and
that is I try to walk shoulder to shoulder with people in that process. Like, first, offering up the opportunity to talk to me before you get a dog. If you're, and that goes in
oh,
terms of service, pet, or anything, right? If we can at least start there, and I know that's something that you do, but when that happens, and perhaps they did get the wrong dog, and here we are, right? Here we are, and it starts with honesty, and that could be the bitter pill of like, this dog is not likely to be successful in this particular environment with all of this going on, and you just have to consider that. You need to understand, as we step off on this journey of training, you need to understand that within this progression, these are going to be the barriers to success. And if we can agree on that, and you're still going forward, I'll walk with you through it, but we have to start there, that we understand that this dog was either bred for this, or the characteristics in which this is what we're working with. And some of that may not be changeable. And okay, if you're going to stick it out and you're committing to this, and we're going to, slowly work through what needs to be worked through to help you be successful with your dog. And that's a subjective term, right? Because everybody's going to have a different definition of what success looks like in a partnership. Then I'm with you. We'll do it.
totally.
May not end up becoming a service dog. Like, I think that's a whole different thing. But nonetheless, I think just the support system, community is critical. I think whatever I've done in the last 4 years, I have learned that I can't do shit without community. I need community. And I used to think I could do it all on my own. I learned very quickly that's not going to happen. I need to have a community of people that I can surround myself with. And many of those, I honestly, candidly, hope are better than me, because you surround yourself with people that are better than you, and then you're going to be better for it. And likewise, be prepared to contribute to those that need a lending hand and in their own respective walk.
Well, and it's like if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah.
Always
Yeah.
seek the excellence that is above you. And then it's also like the clients that I'm working with are unique in their fields. A lot of times they're outliers, or they're upper echelon in the way that they think, and so they're not stupid, right? And so it's not, I'm not going to placate them, but and just like you said, yeah, we can move along this path, but it's like, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen, and then when it comes for fruition, that's that trust that they have in me. They're like, yeah, just like, I can't tell you how many times I've had them call me and be like, dude, it's just like what you said is going to happen. And we'll go along the path too, but it's like there's a time that sometimes there is a breaking point. It's just like
Yeah.
with you with that force-free trainer, it's like, look, man, like there's a disconnect here. This is incongruent. I'm not getting the results that I want. And that's another thing that I say, Ryan, is like, don't believe a word I say. I'm a person just like you. We're working
Yeah.
on interspecies and cross-species communication here. At the end of the day, it's the dog that's going to tell you if this philosophy holds weight, and if I'm full of it or not, right? And that's the other
Yeah.
aspect of this, is that people are good marketers. People are good at selling themselves, and but at the end of the day, their dog is not trained, or they just don't have the results, and then that's when they turn on the shame aspect of this.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but
And
we
that's one thing
own.
I'm not good at: marketing and social media. And you're not going to see me have 1,000 reels out there, or if I do intend on holding a gold multiplicator or a gold school this year, probably in the spring, and I look forward to having trainers from wherever come out and see what we do. And I'm happy to show our dogs and the process, and show my own dog. And if people independently reach out and want to ask and see what our dogs do, I'm always willing to extend out that in the essence of learning. But the marketing side of things, and it's probably a fallacy of my own, I'm not, that's not my strong suit.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, and that's where, but you also, your strong suit is honesty, right? And is like having integrity. And at the end of the day, I think that that's much more important, especially in this field that so many people lack. And we are getting comments from YouTube, but none, zero from Facebook, dude. And usually we have so many, so something's going on with this platform. I believe that people are probably going to have to watch this after the fact. And just so you know, like, you're welcome, Ryan. I'm in Seattle. Have you ever been out here?
I haven't.
Well, you're welcome to attend as a gold multiplicator. You can audit one of my classes for free, bro. And I would love to have you out here one of these anytime that I do. And maybe you should come out for the one that Heather and I are going to do together this
Yeah.
summertime. So I'll let you know. It's before we even announce it. I'll let you know. And I'm personally inviting you to come out um, and and audit one of our classes as well.
I
It,
love that. I love it.
well, it's something that, it's like, just like you said, it's the community and cooperation. And at the end of the day, that's what I don't get about this, bro. Like, at the end of the day, we're in this for the dogs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you're having, when you encounter a problem that we euthanize a dog, like, that to me is not force free. Like, that to me is
Yeah. That's
unethical, right? I don't know how to
right.
explain it, but it blows my mind, man. Like,
Hmm.
and especially for people that you're working with PTSD, that are isolating, that are, I mean, there's so many, like we said, comorbidity. There's so many different aspects of this that you're helping the
Yeah.
people out with. They need a solid dog. Now, typically,
Absolutely.
when you're placing a dog with one of your veterans, I mean, I know that the camaraderie of having a companion is important, right?
Hmm.
But what are the main, if you could, like, what are the main few categories that you are looking for and placing and training these dogs to do?
Yeah. Let me turn the light on real quick, just 'cause it's getting a little
Yeah.
dark in here.
Yeah, you're starting to fade away, man. Looking at your stuff. Oh, perfect, dude. Look at that plane back there. You gotta, yeah, much
Yeah.
better.
So again, we talked briefly about this at the school, but there's a lot to unpack there, just in terms of identifying the person to receive a service dog. Um, One, you have to understand and be prepared to advocate for the welfare of the animal. So when you're identifying a recipient, you got to do your due diligence. I mean, you got to not just uh, meeting for coffee and talking about why you need a service dog. It goes way beyond that, at least in respect to our program. We have people that were selected and trained specifically to help us identify the right recipients to receive a service dog. And the industry really emphasizes the needs and readiness of obtaining a service dog, and looking at those two categories and trying to weigh, do we have a need first, like what indicates need for a service dog? And that's, there's a lot wrapped up in that. And I think you got to look at what is preventing this person, the candidate, from being more independent. What is inhibiting their independence, and is a service dog the right modality for that? Is that going to help them? And if you're hesitant and the answer is no, it's just important that you have an honest conversation and say, like, maybe a service dog it's not the right time, or
Mm.
this isn't going to help resolve some of the issues that you may be facing. Um, you know, and I'll speak in terms of, like, be practical, right? So, do you have a full-time job? Are you going into places of public at normal times of the day? What do you experience when you're out there? Are you very social and outgoing, or are you very introverted and inhibited? Um, you got to look at all of those things. And if you're leading a pretty normal life and you're not experiencing some of the comorbidities of post-traumatic stress, and for all intents and purposes, you just want the dog to be with you, then maybe a service dog isn't the right thing for you.
Right.
On the flip side, if you can't go to the grocery store until 11 o'clock at night because the presence of people bring about severe anxiety, if within your respective space there are certain things that raise the alarms for you, if that's people walking behind you, if it's loud noises, if it's prolonged periods of depression, anxiety, there's a lot of different areas to look at beyond just mobility, right? It's not always, I need this dog to pick up a cane or an object for me. When you get into the end of mental health, there's just a long list of things that you have to consider. And that is why I would always advocate for having a professional help with the identification process. So as a dog trainer, while a lot of people say we're like therapists, but we're not. I didn't go to school for mental health or social work. That is not my space. So what we do here is we have a licensed clinical social worker that has 20 years of experience in working with veterans of all different classifications and different things that they may be struggling with, and understands them at a deeper level than just I do as somebody that has the lived in experience. There's value there. There's certainly value, but and really looking at that end, can the service dog help? Is there a need, and are you ready? Readiness, I would say there's a lot wrapped up in that too, but what have you done prior to considering a service dog for placement?
Okay.
What other treatments have you considered? What's your support system look like? What does a day in the life look like for you? And starting to identify what beyond just not having a service dog is limiting this person from, again, being more independent. And you start to look at the lifestyle, and it could be a lack of community and support system. And we require that. If going through our program, there is a requirement that you have at least 3 members that are included as part of a support system, not only for the recipient, but also for the dog. If something happens and they're out of state, we need to have measures in place so that somebody can respond to an emergency. And if for whatever reason that individual goes into a coma and has to be an inpatient for a prolonged period of time, we need to ensure that there's a plan in place, right? So a support system is huge. And it definitely goes a lot deeper. But when we look at how we're going to train the dog, what are some things that we can practically teach this dog to do that are going to help, this person? And how can we make sure that that is tailored to them and only them? This dog is trained for you. And that requires a lot of work leading up to the placement period. So really getting to understand them, know them, understand symptoms. So going back to support system, we do an interview with the spouse or one of those members of the support system. We start to ask them questions like, what does anger look like for them? What do they do? If they're nervous, are they presenting that in a certain way? Is there something they're doing? Are they getting loud? Do they disassociate? Do they look off into nothing and just stare for a few seconds or minutes? Um,
Do
when
they
they're
do they
nervous, are they bouncing
overuse?
their Yep. Are they bouncing their leg up and down? Are they playing with their wedding band? Are they touching their face? What are the things that they're doing that actually have a picture on them? And we take that information and then we start using that in the training progression of the dog. So now we can say, when you enter into training, we have trained this dog to do this variety of different tasks that will help you mitigate your symptoms of anger or anxiety or panic attacks, or if you're having a nightmare and that presents itself a certain way. But with us, we have to understand what that all comes with. And the second part of that, which is equally as important, is compatibility. Because I have selected the dog for you, Bill, right? Like, and you're coming out in 6 months, doesn't mean it's the right dog. If there's no compatibility there, then what? There's a process of building rapport and a relationship. And if there's no connection there after 3 days, then we have to pivot. So we tend to look at a cohort of dogs, like maybe have 3 to 5 on deck that we can trial and ensure that one of them is going to be the right fit. We use as much information as we have, and we try to select the best dog for that person prior to them getting here. And it has worked out 90% of the time. There have been an occasion where we've had to switch dogs, and we're prepared to do that. But in the event that there isn't a dog that's compatible, then we have to pivot. We have to change gears and revisit until we find the right dog, if there is a right dog out there. Or it could be, on behalf of the handler, maybe a dog isn't the right thing for them.
How do you prepare the handler for that? What do you say when, like, do you have a little meeting with them? Be like, before we meet the dog, I don't want you to get too attached to this animal. I don't like, we're observing this. This is because,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the honesty aspect as well. And the other thing is, like, how do you get most of your referrals? Are they from your on staff psychiatrist or therapist, or are they self referrals?
We have a huge base of community support and providers that we partner with, including the VA Medical Center, local vet centers, the VFWs, American Legions, anybody that's interested in veteran services in this area and starting to become national. People are looking to us as one of the authorities in the space.
Awesome.
Service dogs has just really become a staple for us and what we do, and we do well, I would like to say. So it's word of mouth. Even, I mean, we're getting people from all over the country at this point reaching out, inquiring about service dogs and Google searches and that kind of thing. So it's a pretty wide catchment.
Okay.
Oh, but back to that point, I mean, there's no guarantees in this business. I mean, I can do the best I can to say, don't form a relationship when you first meet this dog. But the reality is, within 10 minutes, that's the case. They're already like, this is my dog. You selected this dog for me. And it's like, yeah, we'll see, we'll do our best. And there are some programs that will bring the recipient out early and actually trial different dogs and just say, like, hey, we're trying to gather information. And I love that idea. We aren't equipped to do that at this point. There's a lot of moving parts there, including there's no cost to the recipient within our program. So anytime we fly somebody
Cool.
out here or provide the dog within the nonprofit space, we're not charging a cent for anything that we have them come out for. We put them into our peer mentor program. So as soon as somebody applies, after they've completed the eligibility form, internally, we're already partnering them with a peer mentor, somebody that was like myself in my former role, to start to talk through some things and manage expectations. We also have people that are focused solely on navigating through the process. So helping them understand ahead of time what to expect when we start doing this. And then before they even get here, we do 5 days of virtual learning. So we're
Okay.
already immersing them in a platform in which they can start to understand some theoretical concepts. So it's not just about me teaching you how to drive the car, it's teaching you how the car works too, so that you can troubleshoot and understand, something as simple as markers and the dog's communication system. We don't really get into a whole bunch of cues, but more or less how dogs learn and think and why they do what they do. You could go through
Well,
the bullet points really.
well, and there's also a lot of different scenarios that we don't consider when service dogs, right? And I remember one time I did this um in deterioration of commands too, like how do we do like a kind of refresher course, like, and
Mhm.
they're doing great, the relationship's good. And I remember one time, I mean, let me finish this. The relationship's good, but sometimes they encounter problems that we don't foresee and we haven't trained the dog for. And I remember this one time, this lady who was in a wheelchair, canine companions for independence, had a nice golden retriever and perfect situation, but she went to go put her key into the lock, and she had a little ramp to her house. So she was up on this ramp. She went, and the key dropped and went under the ramp.
Mm,
And so
yes.
she had to figure this out, man. And she
Yeah.
called me to tell me that she was like, off, under, retrieve, give me the key. And then she got into the house and she was so excited that she had to call me and let me know, hey, you're never gonna believe what happened, right? But I'm like,
Yeah.
great job, man. Like, you did it. And that's that understanding of like, look, I can't be there for you. You can't call anybody. You're stuck on this ramp. We don't, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
there's so many situations that we don't foresee, that we need to kind of give them the keys to be able to solve this by reverse engineer, deconstructing that moment at that time to get
Yeah.
themselves out. And that's the empowerment. Like, she was so proud of herself, man, and so proud of her dog that they encountered a problem that they didn't need any help with. They figured it out. And so,
Almost every public access test that we do, it's those scenarios happen. Like it's call it an act of God or whatever. There's things that occur
of
within that
course.
respective space that really like test the dog. It's what we could be doing part of our public access test in a Target, and that just happens to be the day that it's like bring your dog to Target day or something, and everybody's in there with shopping carts and dogs in their shopping carts yelling at you, and whatever, kids coming up and grabbing the dog. It always happens. It's like, well, we didn't plan for that, did we? But we got through it, and we're good. So just being grateful for those moments, like, all right, you got to test the dog way beyond what we expected, and just passed with flying colors, and grateful for that. And then really being able to see the dog do the job in the moment, do the task, and perform the job that we've trained them to do. It is gratifying. I really do. At this point in my career, I love actually being able to see the end result, especially with those, like I said, the Vietnam veterans that didn't get the welcoming home, and this is finally something that we can extend a hand out and say, like, man, I'm sorry, but here, I hope this helps. I hope this helps a little bit, and it's really special to me to this day. I'm getting to a point where I'm looking to. I always want to do more, and I have to be careful with that, which is why I'm getting into the sport world now. But for me, that's just something that I just want to do more. I want to get into something that's going to really test my own skills and my knowledge and my ability to apply the theory.
Now, do you have people that you refer to out in the country that help with this stuff at all? Do you have other trainers that you work with?
Right now, we are using essentially, we're as an accredited member, we are using a member search tool that allows other candidates or applicants to go into the portal and search out if they're interested in another program. That's kind of one of the immediate guidelines, because for us, like, the one thing is to be able to validate whether or not the organization is seeking to meet or exceed very high standards is important, right? If I'm going to refer a client that maybe I can't serve to another organization, I have to be able to ensure that they can at least, meet the same criteria. I think that's important. I don't think it's the end all be all, because I do know a ton at this point. I know a ton of trainers in the country, and if within my respective circle that I know this person can do the job and they can do it well, and if I can help with the onboarding process, the human side, and then say, hey, Bill, this person here they're good to go. I can't serve them. Can you? Like, that's the power of community. I think that's really important.
Amen.
And then really just getting out there and getting the name out and shared space, like reach out, give me a call if you're getting into this and you're hitting some red flags or some barriers, you need to talk through this stuff. I extend the hand, like give me a call and I'm happy to talk through it. And likewise, if I know somebody else that can help, then I'm going to point you in that direction.
Now, where do you guys get your dogs from? You're breeding them yourselves, huh?
Well, we are just getting into breeding. However, there's two parts of this. So there's a cooperative breeding program that we participate in that focuses on breeding dogs for health, genetics, temperament, training, and that's part of being accredited. The other part is we've built a lot of relationships with breeders across the country that we've gotten some really great dogs from, that we continue to get dogs from. One of them I'm comfortable naming, Hero Labradors. They're
Okay,
out of
Labradors,
Texas. Yep. They're just rock stars, really good dogs, great organization, ethical standards. They branched off and started their own thing called the Hero Academy, and they're great people to deal with. And he provides us with dogs at no cost. He drives the dogs from Texas to us. Like, he's going to do this in January, drop off 5 dogs, and we enter them into the program, and he doesn't expect anything in return. There's some good people out there that are doing some good work and want to support our mission. So it's amazing.
Yeah, they're a nonprofit as well. So, and I mentioned the nonprofit because if any of my listeners want to donate to any of these organizations, I encourage you to do so. And yeah, look at these. And so is it mostly labs that you're placing, Ryan?
We have a couple Goldens.
Okay.
We also offer the opportunity for people to bring their own dog through our program. There's some increased criteria for that. We test the dog the same way we would test any of our own 18-month-old dogs. So if they can meet the same criteria and they can meet the health guidelines, then we'll enroll them into training, and we work through that for a minimum period of 6 months. So we work with them side by side, set up training sessions over a prolonged period of time and help them achieve the benchmarks. But it's with the understanding that if any point in time during this training period that we identify maybe this isn't the right fit for your dog, then we have those candid conversations. So again, there's no breed restrictions. We don't have any breed restrictions. It just happens to be that the breeders we are working with right now are specifically breeding labs and Goldens. There's some lab golden crosses out there that we haven't received, but I've heard great things about. So right now it's primarily labs and Goldens. Yeah.
Oh, wow. This is something that I'm showing a totally different. Oh, here it is right here. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, labs and Goldens are something else, man. Those are some of the best service dogs that I've ever had. I mean, and I talked to Ivan Balbinoff, and he talked about some German Shepherds, which I've had some German Shepherd service dogs that are fantastic. But it seems like these labs are something else, man. They're cute. They're not really intimidating. They're kind of bulletproof, man. They're just all around great dogs.
I believe, it's possible for any dog within reason. And a lot of it does depend on the skill set of the handler and the trainer too. I mean, look at Heather's dog. That was one of the best service dogs I've ever seen, to be honest with you. Rock star. I mean, it was like jaw dropping to watch her work with that dog at Silver School. And it was encouraging. It's like, rock on, this can be done, and that obviously that dog probably comes with some drive too. I'm sure it can do a lot of cool shit,
Yeah.
but she has proved it and demonstrated it in a room full of probably the biggest critics you can be in, you know, all dog trainers that are all looking, anybody that has a dog, you're zeroed in on, right? And she
Dude,
demonstrated really well.
we we had a last silver school, there was a service dog, and we were at dinner, and the service dog went not after, but reacted towards the waitress at dinner time, dude, and that you could have heard a pin drop in that room, and all eyes were on this poor lady. But I'm like, that's what you get, man. Like, don't like just like you said, you're probably in the room of the biggest critics that you're ever going to encounter, because we all have the eyes to see this, and we all have the
Yep.
ears, and that's the other aspect, is like, dude, I see service dogs in the world that's why I say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And people don't realize that ESAs are not the same as service dogs, and we'll save this for our next conversation, man. Like how do we handle when we encounter a service dog that's not really that is a service dog? like there's standards, and there are people that are screwing this up, and I'm not the owner of the store, dude. Like, it's not my job to encounter or to confront anybody, and that's the other aspect of this. I see videos of people that are out there doing that, but I want to kind of wrap this up, man. I'm sorry that we had some glitch or something with our software, but the next time are you willing to do a next time with me, brother?
Anytime, man. I love
Okay.
it. It's
Okay, good.
great conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and usually we have a lot of banter, a lot of people asking questions, and people that are either service dog handlers, people that are interested in becoming service dog trainers joining us. So I don't know what the heck happened, but this is the first time I've seen this glitch, and sometimes shit just happens, man. Maybe it's Christmas, but dude, how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way, Ryan?
It's a good question. Email is a really good way to get a hold of me. Facebook.
What's
I
your
don't mind.
email?
My email is just ryan.j.woodruff@gmail.com. And you can look me up on Facebook. It's pretty easy to find me. I'm on Instagram. Likewise, those are really the only two social platforms I'm on. I'm not super active, but if you shoot me a message, I will respond. And if you shoot me an email, I will do my best. And anything you got, I'm happy to talk with anybody. If you're interested in getting into this space and this industry, and to veteran services in general, if you are a veteran and you need to bounce some ideas off another vet, and you're just looking for good community, reach out. Don't hesitate.
Awesome, you guys. Well, thank you, Ryan. Let's say goodbye to everybody here that is here. Sorry, you're probably watching this after the fact, but yeah, and I'm going to go check it. If you guys are watching this after the fact and you made it through the whole thing at the end, comment down below that you saw it after the fact and what platform you're watching this on. And I'll say goodbye to you, Ryan, in the studio. Thank you for doing this, brother.
My pleasure. Thank